Welcome to Salt of the Earth Farm Stories, where the heart of farming comes alive. Each week, host Darren Grigg will dive into the rich tapestry of farm life, sharing tales of hard work, laughter, and the incredible people who bring our food to the table. From the soil that nurtures our crops to the animals that roam our pastures, we'll explore the beauty and challenges of life on the farm. So grab your boots as we celebrate the stories that connect us to the land and each other.
Rabbits on farms can have a devastating impact, and Tim Bloomfield is a wealth of knowledge on this topic. I'm your host, Darren Grigg, and we chat to Tim about how they arrived in Australia, to them being a food source and income, to them wiping out crops, and to the various methods of rabbit control. Well, good morning, Tim. You live and breathe rabbits. Not necessarily because you love them. I'm feeling it might be quite the opposite. G'day, mate.
Yeah, good morning, Darren. Yeah, I suppose I don't necessarily hate rabbits either. It's about what they do. That's the issue. If rabbits were benign in the landscape, and they lived in the landscape in a way in which they didn't eat the crops, they didn't stop the regeneration of native vegetation, they didn't cause landscapes to change, I'd probably look at rabbits differently. And I was in Spain one time where they're native, and so those rabbits are in a landscape where they're a keystone species for that place.
Wow.
But here they're an interrupter. Yeah. They're a landscape changer because our native plants, for example, just haven't evolved with that type of significant grazing pressure.
So Tim, if I can go back, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a little rabbity town called Balmoral in the Western District on the Gannell River. I suppose you could say it's halfway between sort of Hamilton and Horsham. It's a very nice landscape, the grazed areas of it, and that's what it mostly was when I grew up. Beautiful green paddocks with big red gums in them, and lots of rabbits, particularly in the sandy areas. Lots and lots of rabbits. It was either 3 or 4 rabbit chillers. Places where you could take your rabbits and get paid. A pair of rabbits, I think it might have been 20 cents or something like that.
So they weren't necessarily looked down upon then?
No, I mean my old man, he did a lot of things. He was a shearer and woodcutter and sleeper cutter and rabbiter, and he at times had 300, 400 traps out. He'd go around twice a day.
So it was an income?
It was income, and it was a fairly good income, and it did make a lot of difference to people in rural communities.
And I've heard a lot of stories of people buying their bit of land back then from selling rabbits and rabbit skins and meat.
I think that's reasonably true. If you didn't piss it up at the pub, you would have money in your pocket.
I've heard of rabbits being beer money, and they still are from time to time.
Yeah, they would have been. I mean, it was at a time where if you wanted and needed food, you went and got it. Like, I didn't know there was such thing as a duck season when I was a kid, because if you found a duck, you shot it, and then you took it home and you ate it. And it was very much the same with rabbits. Rabbits were that food source.
How often did a family generally eat rabbits during a week?
Well, we probably ate them a couple of times a week.
Really?
I certainly know that up to the 1940s, people were eating rabbit 4 to 5 times a week.
Wow. What was the secret in getting rid of that gamey flavour?
Oh, the secret of cooking rabbits is to ensure you can't taste the rabbit. That's as far as I
Add a bit of bacon?
People did all sorts of, soaking them in milk and all, there's a lot of recipes for rabbits. And as far as I'm concerned, they're all about ensuring you couldn't taste rabbit anymore. Now, maybe that's because the way in which the rabbit was cooked in our household, but I think I preferred eel and emu rissoles to a rabbit.
So when you were growing up, did your parents have a passion for the environment?
Well, I'd say so. I mean, the first part of it, Dad was an avid gardener. He absolutely loved his veggie garden. And he went into the landscape and he used parts of it. He was a sleeper cutter, so he knew what a good tree looked like and how many sleepers would be in it as well. So he had a respect for the landscape because the landscape gave him a living.
And your mum was on the telephone exchange, is that right?
Yeah, she was. in the days where your phone didn't have any numbers on it, and you just picked it up and turned the little handle, and that got you to the exchange. And when you got there, you said the number you wanted. Being a sickly child, and there being no sort of childcare centres or anything like that, I would get taken to the post office where Mum worked, and often with the ladies who were the telephonists.
Yeah.
And so that was a sort of an experience where there was women's voices all the time. I'm very comfortable with that. And you ring up and you say, oh well, I want to speak to Peter Smith, and she'd say, oh, he's gone to Hamilton today. She knows that because somebody else said to somebody on the phone, and she might have heard that he'd gone there. And so she was just providing that sort of neighbourly advice that, no use ringing him, he's gone to Hamilton, he'll be back later.
She would have picked up a little bit of local gossip too, wouldn't she?
They were pretty good at knowing what was going on. They were the oil between the gears on making things move in the town.
Nicely said. So was nature an interest to you as a kid, Tim?
Nature was just what I was in, and I didn't see it as something different to me. I was one of these kids who read a lot of books. Then I spent a lot of time outside. We were minnowing, we were catching rabbits, we were trying to catch fish, we were in the landscape riding our bikes and just being there a lot. When it happened that it was time to go to school, like the first time to go to school, I don't know what, I was 5 or something like that, I didn't think we needed to, because with my cousins and friends and all that sort of stuff, roughly around the same age, Mum was very much like a lot of the mums at the time. Get out of the house, come back for dinner.
Yeah.
That was it. Come back for dinner, and we just spent our time outside doing stuff. Yeah, and I thought, why would you need to go to school? It's all here. All you need to know is out here. Anyway, the school did provide some other advantages when I got there.
So what's your earliest memory of rabbits?
Going around with Dad in the ute, and the tray's down. He drives along, and each warren system, he knows how many traps he put in each burrow, and he goes around it because he doesn't want to lose any, of course. And the little baby rabbits that have stepped into the trap, they're no value. You can't sell them. So I would let them go. So my first sort of experience is, well, didn't think I was that weak, but I'm having trouble as a 5-year-old opening that trap.
I bet.
And then I'd get the little rabbits and I'd give them a little pat and look after them, and they'd finish up going back into the burrow. Of course, that's not an issue for Dad, because that rabbit's going to grow up and be a bigger rabbit, and then it's a for sale rabbit. So my first experience with rabbits was letting little ones out. I know what happened to the big ones.
Yeah.
The neck was wrung and they were gutted and paired.
Do you know much about the history of rabbits and how and why did they arrive in Australia?
Yeah, roughly. There was a desire of the British colonists to make Australia like Britain. And I can understand that, and I can understand that as immigrants who come to a country, maybe they're never going to get back. It took them months to get here on a boat. Maybe they'll never see home again. And to bring plants and animals that you recognised at home and were part of your life then is quite a reasonable thing to do as an immigrant. The most successful release was almost invariably Thomas Austin, who got his brother to collect some rabbits from near where their manor house was. And his brother wrote that these rabbits were very difficult to catch. It might have been Sussex. They're very difficult to catch. They're very wild. And they put roughly 13 on the boat. By the time they got to Corio Bay in Christmas Day 1859, where the boat arrived, there were 24 rabbits. At some point in time, they got those rabbits off that boat and took them to Winchelsea, not far away. And there, Austin had a desire not just to have rabbits that reminded him of home, but to have so many rabbits that he could go shooting. And so many rabbits that he could go shooting as an example of he's made it. He's a country gentleman who's on the hunt. And that was a fairly important thing in that period of time in the 18th century. And he was very successful because he got rid of lots of predators, lots of native predators. He fenced them in. The soil types of Winchelsea are just fantastic for rabbits. They're bred really well. He gave rabbits away. Not a lot of those people thanked him for that later on. And the evidence shows that Thomas Austin's rabbits, the genetic evidence from studies shows that they're the ones that spread right across Australia. And hence they were a great strain. He did really well there. He picked up a really good strain of rabbits that were wild and were very good at occupying the native animals' burrows. Rabbits are quite territorial and very aggressive. You know, that set in train the rabbit in Australia, and that then was one of the things that has changed landscapes.
Wow, what a story. So hunting for the main reason, but there would have been like a bit of a barter system happening, as well as that gentlemanship thing to do to go and give a rabbit as a gift to somebody for food.
Yeah.
Wow. And it started off in Victoria.
Well, you know, the funny thing there is there's an old saying in the Mallee, which is, you know, you go to see somebody and the saying is, thank your mother for the rabbits.
That's right. And I believe back then in the 1950s, there was something like 600 million rabbits in Australia.
Yeah, look, I think there's a big chance it could have been more than that.
Wow.
Prior to myxomatosis, I suspect if you hadn't really seen it, it's hard to believe what it was like. Rabbits were an incredible resource, and many people made their livelihoods out of it. You know, you had as early as 1865, 1871, at Colac, there was a rabbit canning factory, and that for 15 years operated and canned 6,650,000 rabbits.
Wow.
Now, there were canning factories at Urawa, canning factories at Sunbury, canning factories at Hamilton. There was lots of rabbit canning factories, and a lot of it was for export.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's, as a matter of interest, it's 1.5 rabbits in a can of aspic. You know, they then boil it. They'd worked out this technology at the time, and then that preserves it. And so, you know, rabbit in a can. And you can imagine sitting in your hut with a can of rabbit there looking at you and thinking to yourself, am I hungry enough yet?
That's right.
Will I eat it cold?
Oh, no.
Or will I heat it up?
Oh.
So,
but it was an export. Did they do better in Australia than in England?
I'm not really sure, but it was pretty popular. And you know, I would consider that we exported canned rabbit to the Pommies is clearly an example of how much we didn't like them.
Yes. So you talked about they bred so quickly, but can you tell me about their reproductive rate?
Yeah, well, they've got a fantastic reproductive rate, and this is the bit about rabbits that's really important. That for successful litters, so a rabbit has its young, it needs a burrow. It needs a burrow for protection against climatic extremes, whether it's hot or cold or wet. It needs a burrow that drains well, and it needs a burrow that gives that rabbit the opportunity to be able to survive those events, and you just get more successful breeding in burrows. And you've got at least six times that doe can breed. She might have 6 young each time. And if you wanted to look at what happened in, you know, what's the great evolutionary advantage that rabbits have got, and what's the thing that's important for their survival, you're starting with 24. Christmas Day 1859. Now that is really the most successful. If you look at all of the introductions, you'll have trouble getting to 40 as a number.
So what's their pregnancy period?
28 to 30 days.
So you're saying they can have 6 young
Yep,
6 times a year?
yep. And in that first lot that's been dropped, in 3 months, that's possible for them to start breeding.
Within 3 months?
Yeah.
Not much wonder we got to 600 million pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
so this is the thing that's really that stares you in the face about rabbits, is it's really difficult to outkill them. If you look at the harvesting of rabbits, that harvesting was done and rabbits survived. They're still here after all of those things that we've done to them. Now, the evidence shows that when the burrow systems are no longer available because you've treated them by modifying that burrow so rabbits can't use it anymore, mechanically usually, with excavators or dozers, the rabbit population might drop by 97, 98%. So there's the way, that's the way forward. Now, trying to harvest rabbits, and many times people have said to me, they've said, oh, why don't we eat them? Well, we did. We ate them. We ate them 3, 4, 5 times a week. They still made it. There was a Commonwealth study in 1947, and it showed it recorded between 1904 and 1947, 4 billion skins.
Wow.
4 billion. Now, they were still there in January 1948.
Yeah.
So you can't outkill them, you can't out-eat them, but you can take away the thing which makes all of the difference for rabbits, and that's the burrow systems.
Yeah.
Find them.
So we started to make a difference in perhaps the mid-1900s, but did chicken, once we started to consume a lot more chicken, did that make a difference?
Well, I think there were some changes, and one of those changes that occurred with rabbits, and there was a fella I can remember the name of the book about him, The Rabbit King. One of the changes that happened is that buying rabbits off a bloke with a cart who's walking up the street yelling out "Rabbito" started to become not possible, because that rabbit had to go through a process in the factory that was approved. They had the hygiene rules, etc. And there was a change from the housewife skinning the rabbit at home. The change where people didn't necessarily want to do that anymore. And that food source, that wonderful food source of rabbits, was up against mass production of chickens. Now, when I was a kid, having a chicken was an unusual event.
Really?
A very unusual event to have a chicken. It had to be Sunday, and
Yes.
it had to be something special. The mass production of chickens effectively killed the rabbit as a food source,
Right.
because it was very convenient, very easy to get, it was cheap. It required very little preparation.
Yeah.
And the requirements of the processing of a rabbit from when it was caught in the trap to go into a place where it was scun or turned into a meat source, that became regulated. And that regulation made it more difficult. There's a gradual change in dietary preferences, social behaviours. If you wanted to make money out of a product, you'd make it convenient, you'd make it cheap, and you'd say, this shows you're rich because you're eating it.
Yeah.
You're having chicken now.
So back then, say mid-1900s, was there any support at all to slow down the rabbit population?
Oh, there was a huge amount of effort. There were quite a few government inquiries in New South Wales. They had a competition, which was a worldwide competition, to find a way to manage rabbits. I think, Louis Pasteur was one of the people who entered that competition. There was a huge amount of money put into it by governments, because it was recognised. Rabbits were eating people out of house and home. First rabbit inspectors we see in the 1890s trying to enforce acts.
Wow.
There was enormous investment, and we get Mixo because of a scientist who was determined to bring landscapes back. Dame Jean McNamara was that scientist, and that then it gave people the belief that maybe it's possible to beat rabbits.
Farmers would sacrifice crops, wouldn't they? Be devastating.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The rabbits are easily, they've come out of that bush layer, or they've come out of the along roadsides and just taken out whole swathes of crop.
And pastures, I guess.
Yeah, and the greatest impacts tend to be in those drier years. They're eating something which you're only going to get a small proportion of anyway.
Now, Tim, you're part of an amazing organisation called the Victorian Rabbit Action Network. Can you tell me a bit about this group and what you do?
Yeah, so it was a group that was founded pretty much on the basis that knowledge of rabbits, practical knowledge of rabbits, knowledge of how to manage rabbits, application of best practice, which was being done and had been done. Those who knew that were getting older and older, and the time would come that knowledge would be lost. And I think I used to say it's a bit like the pyramids. People think they must have been built by aliens because the knowledge has been lost of how it was done. Now it's taken time to realise how it was done. And the same thing can happen with knowledge in any industry or any organisation or any community, where those who have that knowledge don't pass it on, or haven't passed it on, or passed only a part of it on, and it's lost. And it's really important to maintain that knowledge in the community of what best practice rabbit management is, of what failure looks like in rabbit management and what success looks like. And the Victorian Rabbit Action Network is part of that. It's a process where old people like myself work with those who have volunteered to come into the mentoring program, and they get the opportunity to learn about rabbit management, and then for them to become mentors in their community and to pass it on. So there's not a big gap where we've lost all that knowledge, and the rabbit's going to win again, and the rabbit's going to command what happens in the landscape.
I've been up to Ned's Corner with you, Tim, with VRAN, that's just west of Mildura, and witnessed the devastating impact they've had on burial sites.
Yeah, they have, because those in that situation, and it's not uncommon, where there's sand lunettes, that the burials occurred in those. The rabbits taken away the vegetation, burrowed into those areas, destabilise that soil, it blows away and exposes the burial sites. That change that occurs there is that country is no longer representative country. The rabbits are changing what's able to grow there, and the desecration that occurs is really quite significant because of their burrowing activities in those sand lunettes where those grave sites are.
And the place at Ned's Corner that I'm talking about, they have made a massive difference in the last, or since 2002, I think, with Peter Barnes and VRAN and yourself, to bring back country and some native species and animals. Peter Barnes has been instrumental.
Oh, absolutely. Without Peter and Colleen, I really doubt that there would have been the level of obvious determination, persistence against rabbits, and a desire to have the landscape return, and helped enable a change that couldn't have occurred otherwise. And they've worked with local Indigenous peoples to do that as well, and they've created what I'd describe as something more representative of country, and it's a remarkable effort that was done there.
Absolutely, a lot of hard work and commitment. Tim, VRAN travel right around Victoria and have mentoring programs around the state. A lot of farmers, with 1,000 acres or less, might just think, oh, we've just got a few rabbits in the back corner of the farm. They're okay, they're not doing much harm. But it's that one rabbit that can make the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, look, just one rabbit over 2 to 3 hectares can stop the regeneration of many native species. And that just means that landscape can't be representative and cannot hold the insects and or the birds that reasonably could have been there. Studies show that in just 18 months, 2 rabbits become 184.
Wow.
So have a look at your place. Have you got 2 rabbits? As you know, have you got 2 rabbits? And what would you like to do? You know, you're in charge of this. You could make that difference by finding where that harbour is that's helping those rabbits, whether it's gauze or blackberries or briars or boxthorn, removing that, finding the burrows, and then treating those so that the rabbits can't use them anymore for breeding.
Because they don't have boundaries, do they?
Rabbits have no respect, and it's probably just because it's only us who draw the boundaries on the landscape.
That's right.
The rabbits just move through it as they need, in order to fulfil their needs, which usually is to find another spot, because the young females and males get kicked out of where it is that they were born. They've got to find another place, and this dispersal of rabbits across the landscape's a social behaviour. They've got to do it, they can't not. And so you just get more movement of rabbits all the time. If all your rabbits died in your place tonight, you're going to get some more from next door. So it's really useful to work together over the largest areas you possibly can, private landholders and public landholders, and that way you can make a significant difference.
I've heard you say that often. It's a community thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Tim, can you list some of the control methods?
So the simplest is a little recipe an old mate of mine, Steve McPhee, used to talk about. He called it the rabbit recipe, and it's the right methods at the right time in the correct sequence. And it's bait to knock down numbers, because you don't want those rabbits doing the next thing, which is getting into the burrow systems you've modified. So you've ripped burrows with machinery, usually excavators or bulldozers, so that those burrows aren't available anymore. You should have lowered that population by 95 or 98%, and then you follow up to ensure that no burrows reopen, and you might follow up to deal with any surface rabbits at that moment before they're doing the burrows. So the right time to do it is generally February, March, because you've got no young rabbits. To breed, they need grass and they need high protein. They get that, you've got breeding rabbits. By the time you get to February, March, you haven't got that. You bait in that period of time. Then you, having found all the burrows and located all those burrows, you destroy those burrows. This is the right sequence: bait, burrow destruction, and then follow up. And that works. And the evidence from rabbit Khaleesi disease sites that were set up from about 95 onwards shows those sites which have reductions of 82 to 98% in rabbit numbers per spotlight kilometre are still holding. And that's where the virus comes in, RHDV2. That virus comes in at that point and helps continue to suppress the rabbit numbers.
I've just heard some footsteps come through the bush at the moment, and talking about control methods, we're talking about Brad Spear here. He knows all about control methods. Hello, Brad.
Hello, how you going, Darren?
Good. So, Brad, what's your involvement in VRAN?
So I'm a mentor as well as Tim, and I guess our role is to spread the word and spread the word of rabbit control and best practice and how to do it, what it looks like and what you can achieve. So really for me it's about spreading that message and that knowledge. Yeah.
And how does it feel when you get some of these landholders having some great success through some of the lessons they've learnt from you?
Yeah, I guess as I get a little bit older and reflect a bit more, there is an emotion attached to it, and so I get joy from that. And it also drives me a little bit more, continues on. I think when you see success and you see change, it just gives you that little bit of a spur to continue on, particularly when you see the successes. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of hard work. It's not just a one-step process, is there?
No, it requires a degree of determination to see it through. And I've seen lots of people over the years give up. So, and I guess that's part of the thinking about, selling the message of best practice, because you don't want to go back and keep, doing the hard task of trying to remove rabbits. What you're trying to do is get it done and get it over and done with quickly and effectively. Because, to go back and continue to do that work is draining. And it's also, it can be at times soul destroying as well. So
Yeah.
it's pretty important that we sell that message clearly.
Yeah, well done to you. And so, Tim, back to you. Talking about biological control methods, is there anything new on the horizon?
Yeah, there's work going on with altering and changing viruses, research looking into what viruses there are around the world, particularly, I mean, the genetic methods that have been looked in as well. It's possible that can happen. We've been terribly lucky, I would suggest, in having myxomatosis, actually a virus of South American rabbits, and having Khaleesi disease. We may not get another one.
Right.
That is the bit. If you're waiting for it, it may not occur. If it does occur, then you better be ready. You'll still have to deal with the burrow systems. That was the mistake that occurred with myxomatosis. The burrow systems remained and the rabbits returned. So RHDV2 is the virus that's dominant at the moment, probably somewhere in the vicinity of about 60% of rabbits that it affects all age groups. It has the greatest impact after the burrow systems have been treated.
Right.
Because now, instead of dealing with, say, 10,000 rabbits, you might be dealing with 10.
Yep.
A 60% reduction, and then makes a really big difference. The other bit is they just outbreed you again when the numbers are high. So there is work being done. The Centre of Invasive Species Solutions doing that. Go get a ticket in Tats. Maybe you'll win there, and maybe there'll be another virus before St Kilda wins a premiership. But I'm not betting on that at this point. Yeah.
Any idea on the estimated economic impact?
Oh, look, it keeps on going up, but I've heard 200 million or more. That's the economic impact in relation to crop damage, in relation to pasture damage. Quantifying that amount in its effect on native vegetation, the lack of regeneration, you've got to plant it instead. I think you'd probably triple that figure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that farmer that's just got a few rabbits in the back corner of his paddock, what can he do? Is there help available for him or her?
I think the first thing to do is go there and see actually how many rabbits there really are.
Yep.
Because often we underestimate that. Find out how many burrows there really are. Have a look over the fence. Talk with your neighbour. Maybe talk with people in the land care group. Get together, map those rabbits. Use something like Rabbit Scan. It's a very simple and easy app you can download and record where those rabbits are across multiple properties, and work out what it is that you want to achieve. What's the result you want? You want more crop, you want more native vegetation. Different neighbours may have different desires. Work out what it is that's possible to achieve. The rabbit recipe works, best practice works. You may have to adapt it to your situation, but working together is the thing that makes the whole difference in managing rabbits, because the larger the area that you do, the greater the number of neighbours who are working together, the greater the reduction in rabbits, and for the longer the period of time that works for.
And the Victorian Rabbit Action Network are there to help?
Oh, absolutely. You can go to our good old website and you can get in contact with the Rabbit Action mentors. We run what we call boot camps, which is places where there's a condensed learning about rabbits in 3 days, and then an ongoing mentoring program from that for people.
And brilliantly done. Righto, Tim, we've got some off-the-wall questions for you.
Right.
These are just short answers.
Yep.
You ready?
Yep.
What's the weirdest rabbit fact you've ever heard that still blows your mind today?
In times of severe drought, rabbits, or change in food source, females can reabsorb the fetus, which is a behaviour of many of our native animals. So they're ideally suited to boom-bust environments.
Yeah. If rabbits could communicate with humans, what would be their top complaint?
Why are you so poor at killing us?
One.
Just
One just yet.
do the job once and do it well.
What do people misunderstand about you most, Tim?
I suspect pretty difficult for me to answer that one. I reckon that it's that I'm usually underestimated.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, and to some extent, not just the way I look, but as soon as I open my mouth, I very quickly get classified as country. And
That's not a bad thing.
I tend to get classified very much as, Jesus, you nearly talk as slow as a Queenslander. So sometimes that people who are like that get classified as though they couldn't know much.
Well, I've loved listening to you so far. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
It'd be helping people help the land.
Yeah, well done. What has been your favourite job you've held?
I think this is probably one of them. Yeah, I think being a BRAN mentor and a rabbit contractor, working with really good people, being able to be in the landscape and discuss what, make questions about it and get answers. And I'm lucky enough to work with Brad, and a fellow who looks at the landscape and asks questions about it and considers change and how it is that occurs. I think that's a really good thing to do, and I get the chance to talk with lots of different people and see them pick up the message. It's almost like a mantra, almost like a cult, and make changes in their landscape with their people, and that's very satisfying.
And if you could tell your 18-year-old self one thing, or give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Put that beer down.
Yeah, hearing you.
And get out.
Get out early.
Get out and have a look around.
Tell me about one or two of the most influential people in your life and how they've impacted you.
Well, I'll definitely say my mother there. She's a very straight, down the line woman, and that was pretty important. My dad had a lot of knowledge, but pretty much you had to ask him a question first for him to tell you. And in my working life, I was lucky enough to work with a fellow, Steve McPhee, and what I got from Steve was a whole sociological study, and few people are able to work with landholders as well as what he did. He was just so good at it. He also was great at research and getting that research information in a way in which people could use it and do stuff with. And we had a lot of good chats and a lot of fun together. That helped me enormously, and it gave me the chance to, work with other people, and Brad Spear, Neil Devaney, Peter Barnes. Each of those people have added things.
What time of the day do you get your best work done?
Generally for me, I'm very much a night person. It's at the end of the day I've decided that I should finish writing that thing. It's at night. I'm not a morning person.
Well, if you could have a coffee or a cold drink with anyone, who would it be?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
You might have had a beer with him last night, actually. I'm not sure.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's all those famous people from history and all that sort of stuff. I think it would be, well, I was going to say Thoreau, but no, I think it would be Leopold.
Right.
Yeah, one of the great naturalists of our time. Yeah.
Good on
An
you.
American forester and naturalist, yeah.
And if you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
That's hard. I think I'd live in Tasmania for the wildlife.
Well, Tim, it's been a privilege to talk to you. That wraps up this episode, and you're a wealth of information, and I really thank you for your time, mate. Put it here.
Good on you. No worries, Darren. Pleasure.
I'd love it if you could follow us on Facebook. Search Salt of the Earth Farm Stories.
Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Grig Media.